Okay, so now we can see the render is done, and we can check that from the projects of the matrix letters. And here in the images folder, you can see we have the letters folder and all of the pictures from 1 to 87 we have it in here. So now we can save this one and hit Control N so we can have a new. Okay, so now what we should do, first we should save those letters and say, we call it falling. Okay, so now what we should do is that we should create one particle for now. So we're going to just hit create from the control. First we should go to select the nDynamics from nParticles and create nParticles, and then just create Emitter. Hit the option box. Maybe just reset that. Okay, so now you can see here we're going to do what we should do here is that choose the directional, and for the direction for the type we should choose directional, and for the rates we can set it just for now to 1, and we're going to change it later. But also we should change the direction to 0 for now. We'll tell you why afterwards, and also the speed should be 0 because we only want to create the particles. We don't want to move the particles. So all of them should be default, and then with that just hit create. As you can see here now we have one emitter in here, and then we're going to front view and create a CV curve tool. You can see here I have it from create and hit Control Shift so you can add the CV curve tool to your toolbar in here. I'm going to hit this, and by holding the X we can select it so we can have a straight line. For now just don't worry about the number, we're going to change it later. And in this example I want to choose the length of 100 centimeters, because now we work in centimeter. And then so for to do so I'm going to create, just hold shift and then right click and create a cube, and we are going to from here choose for the height because we want 100, so we set it to 1200. We just move it to the side, and so we're going to right click, control vertex, and select the last one, holding the V so it will snap to vertex. Okay, so you can see here we don't need it anymore. So we have a path in here, we have a curve in here that is attached to we can attach the particles to this as a path. But for convenience we're going to rebuild this curve that we have in here. Just hold the space bar and then edit curve, and we're going to choose the rebuild curve just on the option box. Let me just reset that. Okay, so now we're going to set everyone to defaults, and then we're going to change it, for example, to 100 or 200, everything that you like. It depends on what you want to do. But if you want to do just a straight line, you don't have to change it because it doesn't important. But if you want to have if you want to modify the shape of this curve, you should have more controls over here. You can see that we have it in here. So sorry. So let me just go to object mode. Okay, now so we have a curve in here and we have an emitter in here. So now if you go to outliner, this is our emitter and this is our particles. We're going to rename this emitter to main emitter and these particles to emitters. Okay, so now if we go to attribute editor and see what we can do here now, we're going to give us some more frames so we can write, for example, 500 in here. And then we're going to select our particles and then select this. Let me just first rename it to path. Select the emitters and then select the path in here, and then hold the spacebar, animate, and then we're going to just motion path and attach to motion path. Let me just reset that. So okay, so now we're going to choose the start and then, so for example from 1 to 500. So for start, and we're going to change it later. We don't need to use follow because they're particles and it's not important. So it's super simple. So now if we hit, let me just change to a sphere so you can see better. As you can see here, we have some spheres that following this line. So basically, if I want to tell you why I use the motion path for directing these particles, for moving this particle, is that if I want to use rate for the emitters, for example here, if I want to use main emitter in here, if I want to use rate in here, we're not going to have a uniform distance between them. We can change but we don't have any control over the distance between them. But by using the path that we have in here, we're going to have much more control over producing the emitters and the distance between them. So this basically, that's what we did. And another more important thing that we should we should change the attributes of the emitter shape is going to select your emitters and then go to emitter shape, and then from the collisions, just turn off the collisions so it will run smoother. And from the dynamic properties, make sure that you should ignore the gravity. We don't want to affect the gravity because we want to have a uniform distance between. And then the next step is from the shading tab. So from the shading tab in here, we're going to choose a sprite for that. Okay, and just make sure you have the depth source because for the rendering we're going to need it. So just use the depth source in here, and the next step is to go into Hypershade. Open up the Hypershade and just open. So now we're going to create a simple material of Lambert because we don't want to have any specularity and transparency. We don't want to have any specularity, so we just choose a simple Lambert. And then from this checkbox in here, we're going to choose File, and then just turn off the filter so we can have a better view, a sharper view, sorry. And from here, just head to where you save those letters. So you can see what letters that we have in, and you can see that we have an alpha channel. So it's open, and you can see here that it will open. And because we have 87, so we're going to use image in here. Let me just go to frame 1, and then also because we want to change our selection each frame, we're going to use interactive sequence caching. So from 1 to 87, we have 87 characters in here, and then we're going to delete the expression because we want to do it manually. So for the first frame just hit image set key, and for the 87, just by holding the middle mouse button and just dragging in here, we can change the timer slider without changing the without changing the animation in here. So for the 87, we're going to right click and set a key. So in each frame we are going to have, as you can see here, you can see from this swatch in here that we have difference for this one. But now if I hit play in here, you will see, and if I hit 6, so we can have a view on that. Oh, sorry, we didn't attach it. So just select the particles, just emitter, we'll call it emitter. Select the particles, and then from the Hypershade, right click on the Lambert that you just created. Let me just rename it, and we call it Sprite Matte. Okay, just select your particles and right click on the sprite matte, the material that you just created, and assign them. So you can see now that we assigned it. So if I select it, let me just hide the path in here so we don't need it anymore. If you just hit play, you will see that all of them now is just one, but we want to change them. For example, if you go down from shading, from the emitter shape node, going to a sprite attribute. Okay, so sprite attribute is sprite num1. If I change it to 2, you can see that they're changing to 2. To 87, we're going to change it to 87th letter. So now we want to animate it, but this sprite, as you can see here, if I change it, it will change all the particles. But we want to have control over per particle. So what we should do here, the next step, from the per particle array, and under that, add dynamic attribute, hit general, and from particles, find a sprite pp, a sprite num pp. So okay, so now you can see here if I right click and run expression before dynamics, so we can have an expression for that. So we want to control it, and we just want to set it to rand of from 1 to 87, but because we want to have a chance for selecting the 88 before selecting the 87th letter also, so we're going to choose 1 to 88. So now if I hit create, you can see that for each particle we have a different type of letter, and you can see that they are changing. Let me just, and also another thing, when you're dealing with particles, just make sure that in the playback speak, it will say to play every frame free or max real time. Okay, so now we're going to choose the max real time. You will see that if I just hit play from start, you will see that we have a okay, just make sure that it's 0. Okay, and from the emitter shape, from the dynamics, ignore the gravity, and that's okay. Okay, we set the collision to off. Okay, so now from the main emitter, also just make sure directional and 1, and also 0, 0, and everything is set to 0. So the next step is to select the emitters in here and go to graph editor, from the window animation to graph editor, where I add a shortcut in here. So if I select the motion path and I just frame all, you will see that we have a tangent. We set a tangent to auto tangent, but we want to have a linear because we want to have a uniform distance between them. So we're selecting both, and then from here set the linear tangent. Okay, so now we can have a uniform distance between all of the you can see here between these particles. We will have a uniform distance, and we have control over this distance that we have in here. So for now it's okay. So now the next step is to create another particles that will be the trail of these main particles that we have. So first select our emitters, and then from the M particles go to the create emitter and emit from object. Just hit the option box. Let me just reset that. The first thing that you can do is to select a new solver, just in case if you want to change anything else, but for now it's not important. So, and then also directional, we can set it to 1 for now, we can change it later. And then there's an important step that you should take here, and I will tell you why afterwards. And you should change the duration to 1. You can change it later, but for now change the direction y for the distance, and also set the speed also to 0. So everything goes fine. Just hit create, and the new particles that we have, we call it try. Okay, so now basically the second particles will be try of the main particles that we have. So we're going to do the same here for, let me just close it so we are on the same page. And for the collision, just make sure that you turn off the collision. And from the lifespan, we're going to set it to constant. And why? And the reason why, let me just set it to 1. This is just live forever, so you can see why. If I hit play in here, just reset it. And if I hit play in here, you will see that we have some particles. It's hard to see right now. Let me just change the shading in here to sprites, to spheres right for now. Okay, to sprites. you can see here that they're moving. You can see that these particles are, emitter particles are creating another particle that are trial, but they're moving. So in the emitter, just make sure that the speed is set to 0 and direction is y. And then from the trial shape, from the dynamic properties, you should ignore the solver gravity. Just make sure that you ignore the solver gravity. So what will now is that these particles, we create a particle and they will remain. But we don't want to remain forever. So that's why we're going to change the lifespan. So we'll change the lifespan to constant. For now, you can change it to whatever you like, the whatever effect that you want to reach. So in here, in this case, I'm going to change it to constant, and for example, 0.5, and I'm going to change the rate to 5, so I can have more to work with. And if I just hit play, you can see here that now these particles are creating, and because I set the lifespan to 0.5, they will be electric. Well, I guess. But another thing that we should consider here is that we should change also for the sprite that we have in here to the thing that we use in here. So we're going to open up the Hypershades, and then we are going to choose this sprite map that we have in here, and we can just duplicate that. Okay, so just select this, select your the material, and then from edit, go to the duplicate special, click the checkbox, let me just reset that, and then because we want to have all of the things that we attach to it, so we're going to duplicate input graph. So by doing this, you can see here all of the materials, all of the settings that we set for this one will be also attached to the new material that we have, and we are going to rename it to a sprite trial mat, and let's just a sprite emitter mat. Okay, so now we have a sprite trial mat and a sprite emitter mat. So let's just select our trial and then right click on the sprite trial mat and assign the shader. So now what you can see here that we have this one. And also we should do the same that we did for our last particle for the sprite num pp. So hit general in the particle sprite num pp. Okay, just right click and run expression before, and just mouse click, middle mouse click, and equal to rand between 1 and 88. Okay, hit create, and now you see this is what we did in here. So now we have a different, you can see here they're changing, the trials also are changing here. But the first thing that you're seeing here is that each particle, the trials that are created, is exactly on top of the emitter in here. You can see there that we have two here. So we should have an offset for these particles. That's what I told you for the emitter of the trial. You should choose the direction y so we can have an offset. The mean distance and the max distance will have the offset that we need in here. So we're going to set it to, for example, 0.5 for both, because we don't want to have any variation between them. So we want to have the exact same distance. So if I rewind it and play it again, so you can see here that we're going to have a distance between them. I guess the 0.5 is a very good distance. So make sure that the direction is 1, and then the max and mean distance also should be the same. Okay, so now for this effect that I'm using for grades, okay, there's no. And also, if you want to change the distance between this particle, between this sprite that we have in here for the trials, you can change the rate. So for example, if it's 5, if you change the rating to more than, let me just 3, so you can see more clearly, you can see here y5, they're exactly on top of each other. So, but if I set it to 3, you can see that we have a we have a distance. Let me just go to the next frame. Okay, so you can see that between these two we have a distance because we set it to 3. But if we set it to 4.8, for example, they will be exactly on top of each other. You can see here that they're exactly on top of each other. So now I think it's good. So we have this effect right now. But just so basically that's it. We're going to try it. We can have more trials in it. You can see here by the rate that we set for the emitter, for the main emitter that we have in here, by the rate 1 for these particles, by the rate 1 we have this distance. So if we want to have more distance, we should decrease the rate that we have in. So for example, if we set it to 7.6, sorry, if I hit play, you will see that we have a more distance between the between the main particles. But if we want to have a variation between the distances that we have in here, what we can do is for the main emitter, we can set a random value. So for example, from here, we can simply right click and create expression, or we can directly put it here. So it's equal to rand between 0 and 0.7. For example, you can choose anything that you like. Okay, I will 0.8. And then basically it's going to create the particles in a variety. So now you can see here, by using this effect, by using the line, we can have much control over the distance between them. So you can see here, for example, it's like this. We can have different distances between them. And also for changing the speed of this light, the speed of these particles, the speed of the main particles that we have in here, we can control it by using the graph editor. So if I choose my emitters, if I choose my particles, which I call the emitter, and for them all, you can see here that the motion path that we have in here is for the 15. We set it to 50, if you can remember. Okay. So now, if I set it to, for example, 200, you will see that we have a much more speed in here. So you can see here that the speed of the change in here. But just remember that because you change the speed of these particles, the distance between two also will be different. So the distance is also will affect the speed of the main particles, will also affect the distance between them. Let me just put it back to 500 that we had. Okay, so I want to have more lifespan. For example, this one, I guess it was okay. Let me just reset and check that we have the desired. Okay, that's fine. We can have more also. You can also change it to lifespan PP only. Okay, so in here you will have lifespan PP. You can right click, create expression. And before dynamics, you can set it, for example, for this one, select what middle mouse click, just drag it over here and just set it to rand of, for example, 0.8 to 1.2, I guess, or anything that you like, you will see fit. Let me just see what we're having now. If I hit play and you see what will happen. You can see here that we have a different lifespan for just I can just make sure you can just change it to, I guess we can give them more 0.5. Let me just and see what will happen if I change it. Sorry, because I set for the per particle, so let me just edit that. We don't need it. Sorry, just edit, and then we're going to use random rate because we don't want to control. You can see here that's because we set it for per particle. This particle will be disappeared. So because we want to have a consistent, we don't have a constant distance between them. So we're going to change the lifespan random rate from 1, and we're going to lifespan random of 0.2. Okay, or 0.3. Let me just 0.3 and okay. So okay, that's better. It's much better. You can see it here. That's okay. So for example, you can see that we have much more here. So let me just change it to 5. So we have more variations here. Let me just make sure that we're on the okay. Let's just back to constant and put it to 0.8. I think that's enough. That's enough. Okay. So now the next thing, basically that's what we did. So for example, for this one, now we're happy. You can play with the method. You can play with the effect that you want. So if I hit, you can play with. If you're not happy, you can play with as long as you're happy with. So for example, we can change the rating here. So let me just put the expression. We can change it from to 0.7. Let's edit, and then let's just let me just bring up so we can have a just 0.4. Okay, I think 0 was too much less. So we can have a distance between them. We can have a closer distance between them. So you see we have a variation, but they are much closer to each other. And also we can control the speed of all of the particles by using the curve, using the graph editor. So let's just hit save. And then for the next step, what we should do is that we can select all of this and then hit Control G, so we can group them, and we call them falling 1. And now what we should do is to duplicate it over so we can have more particles. But before that, if you want to know how many of these particles we need, first we should consider that what are the camera settings. So we're going to change it to Targa again because we want alpha channel. We're going to change it to alpha. Front camera, just remember. And for the final effect, I'm going to stick to HD72. You can choose whatever you like. And we're going to use my hardware because we are going to use a sprite. We can only render it with my hardware. So you can set it to production quality and transparency. That's okay. We're going to change it later on also. So from here, you should just make sure that you have HD72. And another thing that you should change, because we're going to use the render, hardware render. For rendering, you should go to Window, Renders, and Hardware Render Buffer. So now we change the camera to front, and you can see if I hit render here, you will see that we have this effect in here. Let me just zoom in a little bit in here. So if I hit render again, you can see that we have our effect right now. Okay. So now that we are happy, what we can do next step is to select, go to Hypershade, and as you can see here, if I bring up the hardware buffer, just go to rendering and hardware render buffer, you can see here now that all of the letters are have the same brightness. But as you saw in the movie, as you saw in the movie Matrix, that you will see that the main particles are much more brighter and they will fade. So what we should do is that for the materials we can give them more brightness. For doing so, we're going to select our sprite emitter, go to its file, and then from the bottom, from the color balance, we can change the color gain. So if I want to have a brighter, we can change the value, for example, to 2. So if I hit render right now, oh, sorry. Oh, come on. Okay, so I'm going to select it, and for the value, I'm going to have 2. I guess that was too much. You can see it's too much because it's almost. If I just hit it, so 1.5. Let's see what will happen. No, it's too much also, so we're gonna stick to 1.1. Oh, it's too much again. Nope. So 0.5. Okay, that's better. That's so much better. So 0.5. No, this is 0.2, and see what will happen. It's not that much. 0.4. Sorry. Okay, that's enough. And you can play with your alpha gain and other things, so you can have a much more, and you can have a control over your emitters. But I'm happy with it. So okay, you can see here that just make sure you don't change the alpha gain value, because we don't want to, because we want to have an alpha channel in here, and we're only going to use it later on. So which you can just, in the color offset, you can change it to 0.3, or in the color gain, if I change it to 0, change it back to 0. From here you can also change it to 2, for example, so you can have red. Oh, I guess that's better. Okay, that's better. So from the color gain, you should change it to 2. I guess that's enough. It's just 2.5 and see. Well, that's good. That's good. Okay, that's enough. So just go back to 2. Change it back to 2. Okay. So now, okay, that's enough. So now that's how you can control the brightness of your letters. And the next thing that we want to do is we want them to fade. That's why I choose a sprite, because if you want to use instancer, you don't have control, you don't have direct control over opacity of the particles of these particles in here. But in the sprites you can change because you have a sprite in here. If you're using the sprite, you can change the opacity. If I set it to 8, and you can see here that they're fading. You can see here, from here, you'll see that they're fading. Okay, so for example, if I'm happy with that, now that I'm happy with this one, we can change, if you can change it from here into whatever you're happy with, and then just I'm happy with it. Just I want to just apply the brightness for the second one also. For the brightness, I'm going to set it to 1.5, I guess. Let me just make sure that we're good to go. Okay, that's fine. Okay, good, that's so much better. You can see here that they are brighter, but they will be fading. So now, if you want to, if you're using this bright, you can simply just use this slider in here and change the fading. But if you want to use instance, uh, there are some other ways that you can do, but they are very time consuming. But you have very much control over them. But I guess for this purpose that we have in here, it's enough for now. So I guess that's we're happy. If we're happy with the effect of this one separately, that's we can move on to our next. Let me just so we can have a just free, so we can have it so we have a more small. You can see here that they're okay. So now we discuss, because we want to have more of this, we want to duplicate them over so we can have much more. Now if I turn on the resolution gauge that we have in here, I can change the, if I have this as first one, let me just zoom in a little bit so we can have a better view. Let me just use this. Okay. Okay, sorry for that. Okay. Sorry for disturb. Okay, so now we're going to change it. This one is okay. This view is, I guess it's okay. So now we're going to zoom a little bit. This is the first one, and we're going to copy them over much more times. So this is falling one, and because we want to have all of the attributes that we had in here to be copied also, we're going to choose edit, duplicate a special, and then we're going to use the duplicate input graph also. But let's just, for example, if this is 1, I guess we should have 50. Let's just do it like by 50. If I hit duplicate a special, now we have 50 of them and over. So we want to move them aside. So what we can do for moving, we can do it manually. Just select. We can see here that we have 51 here. We can move them manually. So for example, you can select them and manually move them a little bit, and also for the other route. But we can do it a very simpler way by using some a very simple string, little script, sorry. If I can open that, okay, so now let me just erase all of them. You can see I'm using this simple script, so just move them aside a little bit. What I did is that I have a loop in here, and I want to select the falling. You can see there that I have falling 1, it's falling, and then from 1, for example, I'm going to from 2, okay, sorry, from 2 to 51, okay, from 2 to 51, and then come on, okay, so now, and then I++, we're going to increase it, and then we're going to set the attribute for the falling 1, because we want to move in the X direction. You can see here from this coordinates from here. So in the X direction, it's in the minus X direction. You can choose the positive X, okay, but I just select the minus. So it will be, we're going to use a variable, a float variable of template. Okay, so now it will be I minus 1 multiplied by minus 8. So it's basically what it's going to do is that it's going to move this falling 2, for example. For the first one, I is equal to 2. For the falling 2 translates X, it's going to move its set attribute, it's going to move it 2, for example, if it's 2, 2 minus 1 is 1, and so it will be 1 multiplied by minus 0.8. So it's going to move, so the distance between all of the falling 2, 3, and to 51, the distance between them will be 0.8. You can change it. You can change it to everything that you like. So if I hit, let me just copy it. Let me just copy it. So if I want a letter, so just Control Enter, and we have a problem in here. Line 6.5 and okay. No, sorry. Oh, come on. Okay. So it's just okay. So if I hit Control Enter, you will see that. You will see that all of the matter, all of the particles are moving from here. Let me just create a camera bookmark by just clicking on this icon, and you can see here that now we have this kind of effect. And if I zoom a little bit and rewind and hit play, let's just make sure the distance between the letters are enough. Okay. Right now, I think this seems fine. Okay. In this sense, you can make them closer if you want. So, for example, you can get them closer together if you want by just simply selecting. Let's just copy it. And for example, if they're 18 and you're not happy with 8, so you can take 6, for example, and then is Control. Come on. Okay, so Control Enter, and then we're moving to the side. Let's just play that again and see what will happen. Come on. Okay. So you can see now that they're much more closer to each other. Okay, I think that's fine. If I go to our view in here, you will see that we're halfway. If I can maybe just zoom a little bit, we're just far more. Okay, I think this view is enough. Just zoom a little bit. So, okay, that's good. So let's just start from here. That's enough. I'll go to the side, just a little, and we're good to go. So now 51 till here, and so we need more so we can fill this empty area also. So what we're going to do is select, for example, the last one, and then just edit, duplicate the special, and if they are, let me just bookmark the viewer before we move the camera. So if it's 50 from here to here, I guess we need another 20, I guess. Okay, let's just 20. Okay, just duplicate, and then we're going to run this another time, but from here you will see that we have 71, so we change this 51 to 71, and just simply just copy it, Control Enter, and just okay. I think we need more. Let's just from the outliner select the last one, and then just come on, duplicate the special, and just 20. I guess we need another 10 just to make sure. Okay, just play, and then we see that we're reaching to 87, so we should just do it to 81. Okay, Control Enter, and now that's enough. Okay, finally. So just right click, go to View 2, and I think we have more. We don't need them more. We don't need more than. So we're going to draw 1, 2, 3, 4, and we can delete 4. The last 4. 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now we can delete them. So we don't have that much. Okay, so right now let's see what's happening now is that come on, it's very slow. Let's just see what happens. Okay, so now finally, so now they're coming in. You can see here they're very identical. There are some variations, but they're very similar. So what we can do if we want to have more control, if we want to add more variations to this one, we can play. You can see, you can play with velocity. We can change the velocity as we discussed by changing for the path, for the motion path that we have for emitters here, the graph editor that you can see here, that for the emitter that we have in here, we can change it from 50 to 20. So for this, for example, if I change, we can change it manually for each and every one. So for example, we can change it to 600, and for this one we can change it to 400, and etc. But we can do it with our friend script. So what we can do here is that if I go to it here, and if I select this script that I have for you, I'll just erase both. Basically, just what I'm doing here is that I'm going to select the keys. You can see here, I did just like this. I opened up the script editor, and I just erased this area and did it once. So you can see here, this is the select key clear, and select add blah blah blah. You can see here that I used these, and then I added some loops here. So for doing so, you will see that I have from 2 to 19. So from 1, we can see this is motion path from the first and to 77. So it will be from 1 to 77. Okay, template int, it doesn't matter. Okay, so now it's from 1 to 77 on pi++ and motion path blah blah. And okay, so here it's important because if you set this, it's 50. That means that if you select this one and open up the graph editor, the emitter and the graph editor, you can see that this is the frame for 500. If you set it to 500, so you're good to go. But if you have another thing in here, if it's other than 500, you should set it to the value that you just created. So I'm going to run from 400 to 1000, and then just set the keyframe here. Okay, so if I hit Control Enter, you'll see that if I choose all of my emitters, select my name, if I select all of my emitters and open up the graph editor, you will see that instead of 500 for all, I will have a different random value for all of this. So by this, what we did by this, we will have a different velocity for our particles. Let me just hit play and wait for particles to show up. Okay, select that, and you can see that we have a much variety in here. You can see here that we have a variety here. And you can add another thing. You can, for adding more variety, you can also move them up or down. So you can, by moving this up or down, you can add another variety to this effect. So for doing so, we're going to use another little script that we have. For example, we're going to, for the translate X. Okay, so If I control it, if I copied it, and from here, let me just erase both, and then, okay, and here also we should correct it. Okay, so now you can see here is for translate X, so we want to have random for translate Y also. So from 1 to 77, we want to have a random following translate Y. Oh, yeah. Okay, we're going to set it to rand of, I don't know, from 0 or from -5 to 5. From -5 or more, or 10. Okay, so from -5 to 10. It's float and okay, so let me just hit Control Enter. So now you can see here that we have a differentiation for all of these materials that we have in here, for all of these particles, sorry, that we have in here. If I hit play and go back to our view in here and see, start. Okay, so now you can see here that we have much more variety. Let's just bring the camera a little bit down, so after just settle in, and okay, that's enough. Let's just make sure that just all of the okay, so now you see here that we have all of our particles in here in the view. So let me just bring it down a little bit. Okay, that's enough. Just set another one. So if I hit Control S, so save, and that's enough. Okay, so now we're back to view 3, and then I think we're good to go, and we can render this out. So we're going to window rendering and hardware buffer render. So we can hit render, so we can see that, and finally. So now we can change it. We can change the attributes. Go to render attributes, and from here you can also put the names in here. So for the we called final and falling. Okay, so now we have a name, padding, and extension from 1 to 500, and we're going to use a targa, and just make sure that for the alpha, so if you're selecting the hardware alpha, and also for quality, and that's enough. And here also we should choose a resolution that you just selected in here. It's HD 72. Just make sure. Okay, that's good. That's good. So now that you're happy, another important thing is that if in here, unfortunately, it's not going to create you the folder that you have in here. So you should have copy and go to your images, and you should create a folder with that name. So final, and then it will not create, so you should create it yourself. Because if you hit render, it will render, but it will not save, and all of your render will be in vain. So just make sure that you created this folder, and the name, padding, extension 1 to 50, frame 1 frame, image format to targa, or any other format that you want. Just make sure you have alpha channel, the targa TF would be good choices, and hardware alpha, and also full image resolution. So now, okay, we're good to go, and if you're happy with your final results, you can hit render and render sequence. Okay, you can see here that it's rendering 1 by 1 frame, and okay, so I will back when it's done.